priorities that are going to cut through with the general public. The government have got 5 priorities, missions. Do you know what they are?
No. I guess they are the NHS. I think that is one. I'm sure that's one. Beyond that, I'm not too sure.
Do you think they could be clearer then in their messaging?
Well, actually telling us what they want to do would be clearer, for a start.
So we've had 5 missions, first steps, had 2 priorities. How are these milestones any different?
There may be noises off over the past few months, and maybe this should have been done faster with an earlier budget and an earlier launch of the missions, but it basically means the government is set up, the Labour government is set up for the next 4 years in public service delivery and economic drive and growth.
From questions about freebies, farmers' protests, and this week his first cabinet resignation, the PM knows he needs a story, a message he can deliver, and one that people will listen to. Ali Fortescue, Sky News, Westminster.
Now, the first round of results in Ireland are in, and it looks like there won't be much change in the government. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are poised to continue their coalition, with Sinn Féin recording its first decline in support in 35 years. Ireland's complex voting system means the final result may not be known for several days. Initial counts have been completed in all 43 constituencies, with 161 of the 174 seats decided. Fianna Fáil leads the way with 43 seats, followed by Sinn Féin on 36 and Fine Gael with 35. Our Ireland correspondent Stephen Murphy reports now, and a warning: his report does contain flash photography from the start.
There are winners and those that nobody would dare call a loser. Criminal candidate Gerry Hutch failing to get elected as the main parties continue to hoover up seats around Ireland. Away from the count centres, the probability of a similar coalition government to last time was sinking in. In Cork, some felt it was a missed opportunity.
I would have liked to see a bit more change, especially with some of the smaller left parties. Just to kind of give the establishment a bit of a kick to change things up a bit more, but yeah, it doesn't look like we're going to get that anytime soon.
Housing keeps coming up over and over again here.
Delivery of housing over the next 5 years. By far, it is a COVID situation as far as I'm concerned. Something that has to be grasped and really taken forward.
Housing and homelessness at a record 15,000 people now was the top issue according to the exit poll. Dermot Kavanagh helps the homeless in Cork and says the new government must act urgently.
I'm hoping that they will be spurred on by the fact that this is such a very serious issue that affects so many people, that they will be viewed as having failed if they don't. If I'm talking to you again in 5 years' time and we're saying that homelessness is now 20,000 or 25,000, that would be a massive failure.
In Dublin, voters' minds are already turning to Christmas. So what do they have on their wish list for the new government?
I would say listen more to the people. You know, don't throw all this how well we're doing and all the money that's coming in this country. Is listen to the people on the ground, people who are suffering, people who need help.
The winners of this election will be full of Christmas cheer now, but from talking to people in Cork and Dublin today, that may not last for very long. People have clearly voted for economic stability, but it doesn't mean that they're fully satisfied with how the country's problems were being tackled. Plus, any new government will probably be pitching itself to the public in January. And how do most people feel in January? Well, broke and maybe a little cranky. For any New Year honeymoon, the incoming government has to figure out how to finally translate economic prosperity into delivering for the public on housing more than anything else. Stephen Murphy, Sky News.
Pro-EU protesters in Georgia's capital have released fireworks and clashed with police for a 4th night in a row. It comes after the new government's decision to suspend talks on joining the European Union. There's been months of rising tensions between the ruling Georgian Dream Party and opponents who accuse it of pursuing increasingly anti-Western and pro-Russian policies. Do stay with us here on Sky News. Coming up, we've got the sport, including Chelsea beating Aston Villa 3-0 with Cole Palmer once again the star of the show.
Then that will stop the games. That's the only way of doing it. And it's like, it's coming up to Christmas, right? You've got people coming over for Christmas. Suddenly, 10 people come into your house They're eating all the.
I thought you meant people coming over the channel for Christmas.
Yeah,
That's why they're
So I
coming.
know they go back for Christmas. They go back to their country and then come back here after Christmas. No, but if you've got if you're having a family gathering and then all these people are coming in for Christmas, they eat the Quality Street, they sexually assault your niece. Don't. You wouldn't have them. You'd say, right, the door is shutting. It's not going to happen anymore.
One of the things Pat McFadden would say is that they aren't necessarily here to eat Equality Street. And I watched some of this interview with Trevor Phillips, and he said, well, what if we capped it at, let's say, 200,000? And I thought, well, pigs might fly. But let's say we capped it at 200,000, and then the 200,001st person was coming over and they were going to fill a job. And I thought, that's not an argument, is it?
Also, what system waits till he gets 200,000 and then starts to question the next person that's coming in? It's all a nonsense.
I thought he wasn't answering the questions in the
He wasn't. He definitely wasn't. And you know what? Let's start with illegal immigration. Let's get rid of illegal immigration.
Exactly. Like, why is that such an issue?
You know, no one says this. No, it's a problem. We've got to smash the gangs.
Yeah.
And then where was our Minister of State recently? I think in Iraq or somewhere. Iraq, I think, having chats with all sorts of people stood around in uniform, going, "Yes, we're going to help you smash the gangs." No. Stand on the border and stop them getting in.
Yep.
Please.
Perfect. There you go. Daily Mail next. And the Director General of Immigration Enforcement has pointed the finger at the wrong uns causing illegal immigration. Who is it, Ben?
Well, apparently it's people that work in nail bars. So Brits using cash-only nail bars, barbers or car washes are feeding the problem of illegal migration and fueling slavery, warns top Home Office official.
So it's actually the Brits using these places.
Well, this is what... so Baz Javid, the Director General Immigration Enforcement, he is basically saying that. He's saying it's our fault and we should be policing this. And don't go to car washes that are illegal. Don't go to nail bars that are illegal. Maybe just don't go to nail bars. You are part of the problem. No, but... It's just madness that we have to police this ourselves. Like, is he suggesting that we go to a car wash, look at the people that are working there?
It says look at the conditions. He urges customers to look at the conditions and the way that people operate.
Well, that to me sounds, it sounds a little bit racist to me. It sounds a little bit judgmental. If you're going to these car washes and going, no, you look illegal, so I'm not going to get my car washed by you. So, yeah, it's not on us.
Having said that, I've seen stories before that we've covered on Headliners about the Deliveroo guys, and there are some absolute horror stories. So this is sort of, this is true, isn't it? There are people suffering. This is modern day slavery.
Yeah, potentially. I use cash barbers. I use a cash car wash, and let me tell you, the more illegal they are, the better the job. It is not my problem to manage. This is not my problem. And if I walk into this bar, like exactly as you do, just walk into the bar and go, hang on a minute. No.
Exactly.
I'm not coming in here. Do you only take cash? Look, I worry with situations like... First of all, I should make a point. The local authorities are the ones that give them the shops, that give them the land, that give them the licence, and give them the place to operate, okay? Local authorities and central government should be managing this, not you or I.
Absolutely.
However, I worry that they're chucking cash into this as a way of eradicating cash as well, because I don't want to see a cashless society.
Bonus on this.
Well, it is, isn't it? You know what? If you go and pay cash to someone, they're probably nasty
You're right.
immigrants.
That's what he's saying. He's saying cash basically is.
Yeah, and Baz Javid, he's got a difficult job, and he's doing pretty badly at it.
Oh, we're in the Independent now, and amidst the cost of living crisis, there's an ironic new toll to worry about.
Yeah, assisted dying patients could pay to die. Oh my goodness. I pay to park, but I don't know if I want to pay to die. Suggests government minister. This is Pat McFadden again. I think we're going to see a lot of Pat McFadden, our Duchy of Lancaster. He said it was right to consider whether patients should cover the cost of assisted death themselves, citing the fact that this is what happens when people go to Switzerland to end their lives. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's one of the issues with going to Switzerland, is that everybody doesn't have 10 grand. He hasn't given us a figure.
The trouble with this is it's become a left and right issue, and this is not a left and right issue. It's literally a matter of life and death, and it's a moral problem. But it's become
I don't think it's a left and right issue. We had Diane Abbott recently saying she wasn't happy with the safeguarding. I don't see it as a left-right.
Okay, maybe not. Maybe not. I just my lived experience, Bess. And if you are bringing that into judgment, then we're going to have to. I don't know what we're going to have to do. You just carry on being
Is it going to be like dentists, where you have to find an NHS dentist, which are very hard to find?
Yes.
So then you're going to have to find an NHS someone that can kill you on the
Well,
NHS.
we'll probably end
And
up
it's gonna be
going.
slightly
There'll
worse.
probably be loads of immigration cash-only death chambers all along the high street by the end of next year.
What really bothers me is I don't think assisted dying will be expensive. I think it's potentially, and this is one of Diane Abbott's points, it's potentially going to save the government a load of money, and that's what's so sinister about it. So this is almost, I think, am I being told this so that I think the opposite? Is this...
I mean, Diane Abbott did once leave the house with 2 left shoes on, so
Remember it well.
she cannot be trusted. I think maybe, could we pay to kill other people? Could we maybe sort of...
You can already do that.
Can you?
It's just if you get caught, you get to go to prison.
Oh, okay.
If there's room. Moving to the Daily Mail and another story about entitled youngsters who want to play on the internet all day and not do any work then.
Indeed. Now, work-shy MPs are demanding Parliament's working hours to be cut from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. And some want debates to be held online. This is, like you say, just work-shy people. Oh, I'm in the office for ages, I don't want to have to do my job. I actually worked in the House of Commons gift shop, I'll just add that. And
At Laithwaites, we are wine nuts. We are not wine snobs. It all started with my dad in a van back in 1969, and today, sharing great wines is still at the heart of everything we do. So, try great wine with Laithwaites and get 30% off with the code.
they don't really want to be there for that long.
Well, apparently they go on into the night. So it says that they... It's really odd, different... Yeah, maybe that's...
Yeah, I'm not joking.
Different days have different hours, which is very strange. And there's this 5:30 finish on a Thursday where many MPs travel to their constituencies. Early start to the weekend. What do you think, Paul? Do you think they
Do you know what? I'd love to indulge in this in the same way Ben has, and up until about 6 months ago, I would have heartily done so. But I actually personally know a new MP now. I won't say her name because it's probably not in her best interest for her constituents to know that she's friends with someone who works here. However, if you do it well, and she does do it well, it's a very tiring and taxing job.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So
of course.
outside of the work they do within the Houses of Parliament, they also do a huge amount of constituency work, and unbeknownst to me before this year, at their own cost. Often as well. Since the expenses scandal of 10-15 years ago, it's very difficult to claim expenses for lots of things. I know that we're going to cover a story a bit later about energy bills and etc, but it's not quite the grift it used to be. So,
especially not if you've got a hangover when you're doing it. Still to come, so we might move on. Find out which famous actor has called BS on cultural appropriation. Find out who's changed their mind about trans women breastfeeding. And what's happened for the very first time in Belgium before anywhere else. This is Headliners only on GB News.
Now, there were a lot of headlines this week about net migration to the UK falling last year by 20%. We've been talking about that. But really, that was only because the previous year's number was revised up by so much. Another 166,000 settled in the country then. In the year to June of this year, it's thought that net migration was 728,000 people. Now, both main parties say they want to bring that number down significantly. Let's see. I'm joined now by the chair of the government's Migration Advisory Committee, Brian Bell. Professor Bell, were you surprised to hear that the ONS net migration figures had to be revised upwards thus so far?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you sort of hope revisions are pretty random, and so they should be either up or down, and you don't know. So the revisions were up, and were up quite significantly. That was a surprise. It's partly because the ONS produced the numbers quite fast after the period that they're covering, and then they learn more information as time goes on. So the revisions are legitimate. There's nothing wrong with making revisions, but it obviously made the story somewhat harder to understand this week.
And it also makes conversation like this a bit tricky, doesn't it? Never mind government policy making. If you don't know what the numbers signify at the moment you receive them.
Indeed. I mean, when people talk about a net migration target, are you targeting the number that the ONS first produces, or are you targeting the number they produce a few years later? That's why actually we tend not to look too much at the month-to-month or the year-to-year numbers, and we think more about what the long-run trends are in net migration. It's a much more useful way of thinking about policy.
Well, indeed, that's what I want to ask you about, because I remember a day when the sort of settled long-run number would be something like 200,000 net and so on. Now we're looking at something much higher than that. Where do you expect that longer term sort of bed of inward migration to settle?
I think without any further policy changes, it's likely that we'll settle at somewhere around 300 to perhaps 350,000 as the long run figure. So higher than it was over the previous 20 years, but much lower, of course, than it is today. We do expect net migration to continue to fall, but towards a level of about 300,000.
But 350,000 is a big number. It's a sizable town every year.
It's 0.5% of the UK population every year. So, yeah.
And it puts, I suppose, the small boat number into context, does it not?
Indeed. I mean, you know, the amount of publicity both in the media, but also, to be fair, among politicians over the last 5 years on small boats is out of all proportion to their importance within net migration. And, you know, it's about somewhere between 5 and 10% of the numbers are responsible for asylum, which includes the small boats. So we've spent far too much time focused on that relative, of course, very important issue, but relative to the legal migration side.
If we look at, if you like, the big number, 450,000 thereabouts on work, another 450,000 on study and so on, every government keeps saying we want to bring total immigration down because the impact on services, etc. Yet the numbers keep rising. Now, if you're going to do anything about it, you've got to do something about those big numbers, either the work route or the study route. Let's talk about the work route for a moment. In the past, you said that some of our sectors, particularly health and care, are too reliant on foreign workers. Is that still your view?
Absolutely, yeah. So, you know, we still don't train enough nurses and doctors in this country. And so unless we actually want wards not to have doctors and not have nurses, we will need to bring them in from abroad. It's the same in other sectors of the economy as well. That gap between what we need and what we're training for is big and has been for many. I mean, we haven't got a great record on skills training in this country for the last 20, 30 years. And this is the results that we see.
Well, it takes years to train a doctor. Even a care assistant needs some time of training. We are going to be stuck with, or we're going to have these numbers for a while. If we were to reduce the number of visas, what do you think would happen to our care sector or indeed the health sector?
Well, probably not much, because what the government always tends to do, or almost any political persuasion, is they always tend to exempt the public sector from any rules they make about visas. So I worry a lot that what they mean when they say things like, oh, we want to tighten rules on work visas, they mean, oh, except for anything that we have to run ourselves. So the NHS has historically been protected. So when we had a cap, there was actually in the old days a cap on the number of visas we issued. It very rarely bound, but when it did, nurses and doctors were exempted from the cap. And so probably that's what they would do again. But actually, if you took it logically, if we put a cap in or we bore down on numbers, we'd have to turn around hospitals and say, no, you can't bring those nurses in this month. You can't bring those doctors in because we've reached the number. And then we'd have to face the consequences of that.
Well, I was talking to Victoria Atkins, the shadow Environment Secretary, about agricultural work, you know, cap on seasonal workers. Is it too strong to say cap on seasonal workers equals fruit rotting in the fields?
To an extent, of course, it's important to remember that seasonal workers, because they can only stay here for 6 months, actually don't feature in the figures at all. So you've got to stay more than a year in terms of how we measure net migration. So actually, it doesn't matter how many seasonal worker visas we issue in terms of net migration statistics. But I think it is right that if you, you know, we've just done a review of the seasonal worker scheme. If you made it more strict, then we're saying we're not going to grow stuff in this country. We'll import it from abroad. That's a choice that we make.
I just want to ask very, very briefly a question about your work. That the problem is, perhaps, as we've been discussing, there's a slight dishonesty in the whole debate that actually we want all of these things. You can't have them without the people. That must make your job near to impossible.
I mean, it does, in the sense that there's not a coherent policy across government. So perhaps to give you a really good example, we talked about students as an important set of numbers. The government has a policy, or the previous government did, and I have no reason to think this government isn't pursuing this policy, had a policy of having 600,000 international students in the UK. That was the Department for Education's objective. And no one seemed to notice that if you wanted to have 600,000 international students in Britain, you would have to issue them visas. And there was no link. So we have a policy from the Education Department that says we must have 600,000 students in Britain. Well, you're going to have to issue them visas. Unless you change that policy, I don't see how you change the visa numbers.
There's a challenge to government. Professor Bell, thank you so much for your time this morning.